On April 2nd, President Trump announced sweeping new tariffs targeting Chinese exports and several Southeast Asian nations. The goal was to stop a growing practice where Chinese products are rerouted and relabeled through third countries to disguise their true origin and dodge U.S. trade restrictions. The U.S. introduced a new base tariff of 10% on all imports, then layered additional country-specific tariffs on top. China now faces a total tariff of 54%, combining a new 34% tariff with an earlier 20%. Meanwhile, ASEAN countries like Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam, Myanmar, Bangladesh, and Thailand are being hit with tariffs ranging from 36 to 49%. The message is clear. Countries suspected of helping China bypass trade rules are being held accountable. Over the past few years, Chinese manufacturers have shifted production to neighboring ASEAN countries. These moves are not just about lower labor costs, but are part of a strategy to bypass trade barriers. Factories are opened or partnerships are formed, so products can be exported under ASEAN labels rather than as made in China. But will these new tariffs actually push ASEAN countries closer to China? Probably not. ASEAN economies rely heavily on U.S. markets to grow, just as China once did. China and ASEAN are not in a buyer-seller relationship like the U.S. and ASEAN. They are in a seller-seller competition, both fighting for global export markets. Unless China opens its domestic market more widely to ASEAN, which it has resisted doing even since joining the WTO in 2001, there is little reason for ASEAN to shift their loyalty. China has the advantage of stronger infrastructure and scale, so ASEAN is more likely to seek compromise with the U.S. They may increase trade restrictions on China to prove they are not helping it evade tariffs. In fact, in January, Vietnam's prime minister even joked that he would golf all day at Trump's Mar-a-Lago if it helped his country, a clear sign of ASEAN's commitment to U.S. ties. Meanwhile, Hong Kong is playing a subtle but strategic role. In 2024, Hong Kong Chief Executive John Lee Ka-chiu visited Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos to build economic links under China's Belt and Road Initiative. His trip, mocked at the time for courting developing countries over traditional Western partners, now looks more like a calculated move to strengthen trade ties where China needs them most. Hong Kong's exports to Vietnam hit $14 billion in 2023, up 40% from 2019. The majority of those exports were electronics, which Hong Kong does not manufacture. These goods are almost certainly produced in mainland China and funneled through Hong Kong, possibly another layer of origin masking. As of now, China remains the only country that has retaliated against Trump's reciprocal tariffs, slapping a 34% tariff on all U.S. goods. Over 50 other countries have instead reached out to negotiate. Why is China taking the hard line? While pride may be a factor, the deeper reason could be that Beijing believes the U.S. is serious about decoupling and building a supply chain without China. If that is the case, then compromising might change nothing for China. Conversely, inflicting maximum economic pain to the U.S. by retaliation may change the course of the midterm election 2 years from now. By the way, the son of China's former Vice Premier Liu He, who also signed a trade deal with President Trump in 2020, is currently under investigation. This is a strong warning signal for those high-ranking officials in China who still want trade talks with the U.S. this time around. On April 7th, Trump gave China 1 day to reverse its retaliation or face an additional 50% tariff, bringing the total to 104%. He also warned that continuing to buy oil from Venezuela would trigger a secondary 20% tariff. At this point, facing a trade death sentence twice is not much scarier than once. If decoupling is truly the goal, Trump may not want China to back down either. Ultimately, this is not just a tariff battle. It is a global reset of the supply chain, and every player, including Hong Kong and ASEAN, is being pulled into the storm. That's all for today. If you found this helpful, please like, share, subscribe, and comment below. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.